Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations adapt and thrive in an accelerating, exponentially changing world. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA and CIMA, the largest global body of certified professional accountants in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about the changing role of the CFO in an era of disruption. And our guest is the perfect guy to talk about this. Randy Wootton is the CEO of Maxio, a 3 times SaaS CEO, public, private, VC, and PE backed. There's a lot of acronyms for you to start out, and a board member of multiple private companies. He's the host of the SaaS, SaaS Expert Voices podcast, which I'm now a subscriber of. He leads a team focused on equipping B2B SaaS businesses with the tools they need for sustainable growth in a dynamic market. Under his leadership, Maxio aims to address the financial operational challenges faced by many growing SaaS companies, which often rely on spreadsheets and disconnected systems. Maxio's mission revolves around providing a value-adding billing and revenue tool that simplifies and automates financial operations, helping companies to scale more effectively. The platform is designed to handle complex billing requirements and offers a range of functionalities, all integrated into one system. This all happens to be the fastest growing practice areas for accounting firms we call CAS, or Client Advisory Services, and includes fractional CFO and outsourced accounting, in addition to a lot of the other businesses that are moving into that subscription model. Randy, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. And Tom, you nailed it. We need to have you on our sales team. You got our pitch down perfectly.
Well, it's because I'm in charge of B2B here at the association, and some of these concepts are things, as you and I've talked about, are things that we might need to be considering. So
that's right.
I've been looking forward to this. Let's talk about your relatively new role as CEO of Maxio, and what are you excited by with this new venture? Talk a little bit about your SaaS businesses and the work with VCs and high growth companies.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I've been at Maxio for just over 18 months at this point. Maxio was the mashup of 2 companies, one SaaS Optics and the other one Chargeify, both of which had been around for about 12 years. And they were brought together in 2021 by Battery Ventures that did a mashup, a merger of equals, which I've heard is called the triple Indy. It's so hard to do. I joined them in 2022, having spent about 20 years in SaaS companies, primarily focused on go-to-market organizations, so selling to marketers and sales and service folks. Last couple of roles, as you mentioned, have been CEO roles backed by VC and private companies. My last company that I was CEO of was called Percolate, backed by Sequoia, GGV, Lightspeed, first round capital. So really great syndicate. And we adopted the legacy SaaS Optics capability, which is about invoicing and reporting, revenue recognition. And it changed my life, Tom. Literally, we would go from me working with the CFO for the first 8 to 10 days to just close the books, get your 3 financial statements, and then spend the next 10 days trying to figure out what just happened, looking at Excel files and someone fat fingering the Excel file and then sliding into the board meeting, hoping the numbers are right, and often having them be different from month to month. And those guys at Sequoia, GGV, and Lightspeed, they know their way around a spreadsheet, and they would bust our chops. I went from that reality to, with SaaS Optics, being able to push a button the day after the month closes and be able to see what your ARR and revenue is. It's a day, maybe 2 days. It's not a real button, but you get the idea. It changed what we did as a CEO and a CFO in terms of how we started to be able to think about our business, work with the executive team to understand the insights of what's happening in terms of churn by product, by customer, by region, what's happening with new pricing insights. And so it just moved us from our back foot to the front foot. And that was when Maxio was looking for a CEO. I thought, gosh, I know this problem. I've lived this problem. And every B2B SaaS company out there needs a solution like what we offer.
I hear you. That's a great story. And you just gave our watchers a whole kind of orientation of the whole SaaS model. So thank you for that. I remember a famous quote by Chen Zhao, the CEO of Zora, that said, every business will soon be a subscription business.
Right.
Obviously, that's what your hallmark is here. Tell us why this arena of B2B SaaS is such an important category today.
Well, I think what's interesting is sometimes the idea of SaaS gets conflated in terms of software distribution versus business model. So the first thing I'll talk about is software as a service, as a software distribution model. It's been around for a long time. I mean, heck, when I came out of business school in 99, 2000, all the software I worked with was distributed over the cloud. We called it web-based ASP, application service providers. It was just Mark Benioff's brilliance to come up with the cloud and SaaS. And so it changed everyone's way of thinking about it. I remember when I was at Salesforce for a while and we put out these buttons, which was no software. I was like, what are you talking about? We still have software. I had like cognitive dissonance around it. But I think everyone agrees that the multi-tenant distribution of software is the way we're going forward, even though there's still a large number of companies that are using on-prem software. The future, even Steve Ballmer had embraced at some point the idea of the public and private cloud and how do you get your software. So I think that trend. The other disruption about the software as a service business model is the subscription model, which is moving from CapEx to OpEx and aligning value in terms of, we talked a little bit about this before, but buying the house versus renting the house. I'd much rather rent the house and be able to call the plumber to fix it than have to get down on my knees underneath the sink and fix it myself. And so I think the way you think about, I am buying a product, an ongoing subscription for access to the product. There's an assumption that the company is building that product is doing regular releases, and I'm getting in continued value from my engagement with that company. Very different than the on-prem model, and you would get updates every 3 years that you had to go, oh my God, now I got to incorporate all these new updates. So it's required us to think about differently. How do we release software? On the other side, how do you engage with that software? When do you deploy it to your users? And then how do you pay for it? And think about the value that you're getting from it.
So you're hitting on a really big area that has taken the CPA profession by storm. And quite frankly, many of our members, CFOs, et cetera, as they've had to adapt to these changing and emerging business models. So certainly your points are really good, both the SaaS as a software distributor in the cloud and then SaaS as a changing business model to handle subscription-based models, which are like all the rage right now. Obviously, we are a subscription-based model. We're an association, so members all pay dues on a recurring basis, and that's a major part of our line. So it's interesting because I remember on your podcast, you did an interview with Robbie Kellerman Baxter, I think.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So I've done a couple things with her. She actually spoke to our group over a couple of years, and I've got all her books, and that's a great, the whole membership economy, all that. She's another one for our listener. I might have to get her on the show at least some point. But your point is that those business models are in fact different, and you spouted out a whole bunch of terms there, ARR, churn, all those concepts that aren't in the typical CFO repertoire.
That's right.
So take a minute and just explain those two, because those were big ones that you spun out right away. And I know I'm sure many of them know, but there's a few out there that don't know exactly what those mean.
Sure. And I think this is where the power of Maxio really demonstrates its value is by being the source of the big thing was the 606 compliance mandate, in that software companies needed to figure out and be clear about the revenue recognition. Now, you and your friends are going to know how to do that. I don't. It's just a big, scary thing about how you do revenue recognition. But once you do your revenue recognition and you own the revenue and know what's happening in the deferred revenue, the MRR schedule, you can roll into this, the MRR being monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue. ARR is 12 times your MRR. So it's just an easy calculation, but it's not synonymous as saying revenue. There is a distinction between the ARR, the annual recurring revenue that a salesperson is booking, the revenue that you're getting for professional services, and revenue you may be getting from other feeds as well. And so there is this complexity in terms of revenue management, which manifests also in your subscription management. So to your point, you're a subscription-based business. You have people who are signed up. You're counting that ARR when they sign an annual contract. They may do some upsells, some downsells. So that's when we talk about expansions and contractions, which are happening to the subscription. They may add on some add-ons, some additional ARR. So just think about that level of complexity. And now if you move from a seats-based model of subscription, which I imagine is what your model is, companies, especially those that are early stage companies focused on AI, they've moved into this new world around consumption ARR, which is based on usage. And so now you have this whole nother level of complexity of thinking about how to align the way people want to bill is more aligned with the way that customers want to perceive value. So for example, and this goes back to when I was at a company in 1999, 2000, we were an ad serving platform. So customers would pay us for the platform and access to the platform. So there was some subscription-based revenue. They also paid us for the number of ads that we were delivering across our platform, because that was a volume-based cost. And so we needed to make a little money on that. And we created tiers. So if you delivered this many ads, it was priced at this point, but you would have tier-based pricing. And so you have this very complex world in terms of, well, how do you recognize the subscription versus how do you recognize the ad serving revenue? Well, that's continued on. We have customers like Motorola that are using us in their division for radios, and they're trying to move from an OpEx investment to a CapEx investment tied to usage of the radios. So I think the business models of customers out there, B2B in particular, are forcing vendors like us to provide solutions. And I think partners like yours in that broader community to be able to augment what they provide in terms of bookkeeping to stepping into this CAS where they're advising CEOs and investors in terms of how to think about the subscription operating metrics.
Yep. Yeah, makes total sense. Now, the other thing you and I spoke about briefly is your SaaS growth index report.
Yeah.
That I think was recently put out. Tell us what your big insights are from this, and then we'll be able to put a link in our chat box as we go through this.
That'd be great. So the first version of the Maxio Institute Growth Report, which people can find on our website, came out in Q1 of last year. It was a look back on 2022 and what was happening across our customer base, which was about 2,300 customers. We skew from pre-revenue, obviously, so they'd have to have some revenue, to just about $50-60 million. And we looked across by segment, by size, and by funding stage, what the growth rates were. And what we found, and we published quarterly throughout the year, we found that the growth rates, as you can imagine, in Q1 of 2022 were high, about 30%, and then nosedived in Q1 of 2023 down to about 13%. Q2, they were at 15%, and Q3, they were about 16%. And on January 17th, we're going to release the next report at a webinar, which will include a link in to this show. But for your listeners, I'll give you the preview, is 14% year-over-year growth. So it's stabilized in this 14 to 16%, way off of where we had been. And so I talked to people about this being, 15 being the new 30. It used to be you had to have 30% year-over-year growth rate, or you weren't able to get any money and your investors were beating you up. The value of this Institute report, it's not survey. It's based on $15 billion of invoicing and billing going across the platform. So it's the real data.
It's the real deal.
It's the real deal. And so that's our intention, is it's anonymized, but it's to provide value, I think, for your group in particular, CPA firms, to have this, to be able to go to their partners, their clients, and say, hey, look, this is what's happening broadly across the software landscape. Series A, Series B, Series C. We're going to have it split by vertical in this new report. And they can then help inform the planning that their clients are expecting for, what's their ambition for this year.
Cool. That's and for our CFO community who are running companies that are building into this business model, they'll be able to gain a lot of insight about their competitors and maybe impress their boards when they present some of this stuff.
I think that's the thing when you and I chat a little bit about CFOs, this disruption of the office of the CFO and the evolution of the role of the CFO. And I mean that both for fractional, I mean that for full-time, and then CPA partners, with this CAS 2.0. It's been a long time you guys have been working on that. Like those firms that are able to step from compliance, like I did the bookkeeping, I got the reports done, to insights, I think are going to be the ones that are going to be leading the way going forward.
I mean, you hit it right there, and you actually for our watchers out there, you guys ought to check out his podcast that he did with his CFO, where he actually had a great conversation about that and the idea of moving from back office to front office, becoming, I think, as he put it, a co-pilot with the CEO, being you, and really how this idea of moving from hindsight to strategic foresight, and that's. Yeah. And it seems like the SaaS companies are probably already ahead of this, trying to look at that, which is where all these metrics come in from.
And I think the key to that is creating capacity for people to do that analysis. And that's the difference from 8 to 10 days closing the book, 8 to 10 days trying to figure out what just happened in terms of customer segmentation, to now, if you have that information on day 2 of your business cycle, you as CFO can work with your FP&A, your controller folks, to develop an informed opinion. And so then you provide, so for example, you roll out new pricing. How has that impacted your attach rates? How has it impacted your churn rates? On average, I think I saw some statistic that SaaS companies, because the market is sort of getting a little bit constrained on demand, public companies are all raising their prices by 9%. Guess what? That's going to manifest in lower attach rates and probably higher churn. If you're a CFO that is rolling out new pricing, where do you roll it? Which segments? How do you test it? How do you do A/B testing? I think there's enormous value that you can add using these metrics, where you're able to do that unit cost economics, customer segmentation, and just ARR roll forward. What's playing out where?
Love it. I think you just gave our audience like an MBA in running a SaaS company for sure. Let's just close with this final word of advice to our CPA firms and CFOs about what they can be doing better. Well, I guess you kind of covered most of it as CEOs and becoming that strategic advisor.
I think that's it. Look, what's so interesting to me, because I've never sold a CFO before. I love my CFO that I've worked with. Is I think there's this orientation around CFOs, and I imagine CPAs, like, you take great pride in being an expert and having the answers. So that often means that you don't trust anybody else's work other than yours, which means you need to build the Excel file from scratch, and you need to be able to run that and manage your cash and all that. I don't want to take that away from any of those that are finance folks. I just want to sort of encourage them to say that doesn't have to be all their job. The value they can add in terms of being a partner, in terms of the insights around what's working with the business, what's not, may feel uncomfortable, because we're asking you not just to be an expert, but to be an advisor, to be a consultant. And I could go to McKinsey, BCG, or Bain to get that type of advice. But gosh, wouldn't it be great if my CPA partner, if I was an early stage company, or my fractional CFO was able to come in and say, here's your business radar, Randy. And people can read about this on LinkedIn. I've written a whole bunch about this. Like, these are the 27 metrics we should be looking at across growth, profitability, expansion, and efficiency. And we're going to look at that every single month, red, yellow, green. And we're going to see which ones we're going to go put energy and effort against to make better. You can't manage all 27 at one time, but how do you get the entire company lined around a radar, which is telling you what might happen and how to inform the actions you want to take, versus what happened and ensuring you are compliant and you have appropriate governance. So I think it's just a difference in orientation, which may feel a little bit uncomfortable. Channel your inner sales, make some stuff up, make some bets, and then track it and see how it plays out.
You captured that perfectly, Randy, which is exactly what we've been trying to communicate to our CFO community and our CAS and advisory community. So I knew this was going to be a killer episode, and thank you for being on our show here. You guys got a good, definitely a master's in SaaS businesses on this program today, and with all the resources that Randy put it out. You can follow him on LinkedIn at Randy Wootton, WOOTTON, and on X, he's at @we are Maxio, all one word. And then he's got his own X account, Randy Wootton 3. So that's where you can sign him there and sign up for his SaaS Expert Voices podcast. With that, I want to thank all of you, our audience, for joining us. And don't miss other Future Ready Live sessions back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. See you then. And again, thanks again, Randy.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.